Something big is changing in Russia. It's not happening on the battlefield, broadcast on the nightly news. This change is quiet, almost invisible to the outside world. But beneath the surface, it's creating a vulnerability that could be profoundly dangerous for the Kremlin. This is a problem happening far from the front lines of the war in Ukraine, a domestic crisis unfolding on the streets of Moscow, in remote towns in Siberia, and in countless communities everywhere in between. It's a threat to the state's most basic function, maintaining order. The number of police in Russia is falling fast. This is not a slow, manageable decline. It is a rapid hollowing out of the very force meant to keep the peace and enforce the government's will. To put it bluntly, Russia is running out of police. Across the country, thousands of police jobs are empty, with no one to fill them. It is a simple fact with complex and serious consequences. Experts watching this with growing concern are calling it a ticking time bomb, a crisis of internal security that the state can no longer ignore. This is not speculation or an outsider's critique. This comes from Russia's own government. The Interior Ministry itself admits the country lacks about 172,000 police officers. That is a staggering figure. Nearly 1 in every 5 positions is currently unfilled. And it's not just the police. The Federal Penitentiary Service is missing nearly a quarter of its staff. Police stations are partly empty. In some regions, they are sometimes entirely empty. The few officers who remain are stretched dangerously thin, working impossible hours, burning out, and ultimately, leaving the force themselves. This creates a vicious cycle of departures and deepening shortages. For a leader who built his power on the promise of stability and the strength of a police state, the very foundation is cracking. Across Russia, a quiet crisis is unfolding within its law enforcement agencies. Why are police officers leaving in droves, creating a vacuum in public safety? While the reasons are complex, one of the biggest is brutally simple. The pay is just too low. A patrol officer in Russia might earn about 38,000 rubles a month, roughly $380. In a country where the cost of living is steadily climbing, this figure is more than just a number. It's a daily struggle. This is simply not enough to support a family, especially in a major city like Moscow or St. Petersburg, where rent alone can consume most of that paycheck. The economic reality is that many jobs requiring far less risk and training pay significantly more. A taxi driver, a delivery courier, even a cashier can often out-earn the very people tasked with upholding the law. For years, police salaries have stagnated, failing to keep up with inflation and the rising cost of basic necessities. As a result, people no longer see police work as a stable or desirable career. Meanwhile, the war in Ukraine offers powerful, competing incentives. The military is actively recruiting with promises of large signing bonuses and substantially higher pay. For the same pool of young, able-bodied men who might have once considered law enforcement, the Army now presents a far more lucrative, if dangerous, alternative. And it is not just about attracting new recruits. Keeping seasoned, experienced officers on the force is getting harder. Faced with overwhelming pressure and poor compensation, many are simply quitting. One ex-officer told the BBC he now earns twice as much money as a taxi driver, with far less stress. His story is not unique. Even the off-the-books supplements that once padded meager salaries have been curbed by recent crackdowns on corruption, ironically making the job even less financially viable for some. This creates a vicious cycle. Officer departures dramatically increase the workload for those who remain. This fuels more burnout, which in turn leads to more departures. Police stations are forced to run on skeleton crews. Overburdened detectives rush through investigations. Cases that require time and resources go unsolved, piling up in dusty evidence rooms. It is a recipe for institutional collapse, a slow-motion decay of a critical public service. The war in Ukraine has reshaped more than just the police recruitment pool. In a desperate search for manpower, the Kremlin made a dangerous bargain. It began recruiting soldiers directly from its prisons. Thousands of convicts, including violent offenders, offered a deal. Exchange a sentence for service on the front lines. Survive and receive a full pardon. Return not as ex-convicts, but as war heroes. Prison populations plummeted, easing staff strain there. But it created a much larger problem down the road. The state sent its most dangerous individuals to a place where extreme violence is normal, trained them, armed them, and promised freedom. Reports say the drive was shockingly broad, even the most serious offenders included. By early 2024, up to 180,000 convicts recruited. Putin defended the strategy. They earned a second chance by serving the motherland. But when they return, they re-enter a society with fewer police. They bring combat skills, trauma, and in too many cases, weapons. A short-term solution for the army, a long-term threat to domestic security. The growing police shortage is not an abstract problem. It has real, tangible effects on daily lives. Crime is on the rise. With fewer officers on patrol and longer response times, criminals are growing bolder. Reports point to a sharp increase. Offenses are becoming more violent. Armed robberies, assaults, homicides. Urban areas and remote southern and eastern regions are hit hardest as police presence thins. Illegal weapons flow in, smuggled from the conflict zone and diverted from stockpiles. Illegal firearms offenses have surged. More guns, fewer police, a volatile mix. Alcohol abuse is rising again for the first time in years. While correlation is not causation, the timing is hard to ignore. Returning traumatized soldiers, a weakened police force, and rising alcoholism, fuel on a smoldering fire. Communities feel less safe. The social fabric frays without rule of law. Police are overwhelmed, under-resourced, and unable to protect communities. A downward spiral that is difficult to reverse. A new and unpredictable element is being added to Russia's already volatile social mix. An army of men, hardened by the front lines, is coming home. Hundreds of thousands have already rotated back from the battlefield, and many more will follow. They are returning not to a hero's welcome, but to a nation fractured by the war, economically strained, and neither grateful nor stable. They arrive in a country already struggling with a severe police shortage and a documented surge in violent crime. The state's ability to maintain order is fraying at the edges. Many of these returning soldiers carry deep psychological scars, the invisible wounds of PTSD, moral injury, and desensitization to brutality. On the front, they were taught that violence is the primary tool for solving problems. That brutal experience does not simply vanish when the uniform comes off. It's a mindset that follows them back into civilian life. The consequences are already being felt. Domestic violence, public brawls, and other violent crimes involving veterans are increasing sharply across the country. One independent report notes veterans have already killed or seriously injured around 500 Russian civilians. With more men returning every day, this number is tragically certain to climb. And with the men, the weapons come home, legally and illegally. Trophies of war and black market firearms are seeping into Russian communities. The combination of combat skills, psychological trauma, and readily available weapons in under-policed communities is a uniquely dangerous and explosive mixture. Sociologist Igor Eidman put it grimly, describing a fundamental shift in the country's moral landscape. All the traditional ideas of good and evil are being turned upside down. Soldiers and pardoned convicts return with a new state-sanctioned status and a powerful sense of entitlement, a self-styled elite who believe they are owed respect and deference. A police officer recalled a freed criminal turned veteran telling him, "You won't be able to do anything to us anymore. Now's our time." It's a direct challenge to the state's authority. With low pay, high risk, and declining social status, what incentive remains for anyone to join a police force so easily and openly defied? Faced with this mounting crisis, Vladimir Putin's government has few good options. Raising salaries and improving conditions would help retain and recruit. But the war is enormously expensive. The budget is strained, resources flow to the military. Symbolic gestures aside, recruitment targets have been missed by a wide margin. Recruiting veterans into the police sounds logical. Experience, discipline, weapons skills. In reality, it means a massive pay cut and does not address trauma. Pardoned criminals are not viable recruits. Without reforms, the Kremlin could lean on elite internal security units like Rosgvardia to crack down. Turning a paramilitary force against citizens on a wider scale is dangerous. Such a move risks violent backlash, turning crime problems into civil unrest. Ultimately, the police shortage stems from the invasion of Ukraine, draining money and manpower, starving the police of resources. As costs reverberate homeward, only massive reforms or a drawdown in Ukraine can halt the hollowing out. The state's ability to govern is eroding from within, leaving a vacuum for chaos. Russia's police shortage is more than just a statistic. It is a clear and present danger to the country's stability. Multiple factors combine into a recipe for disaster. A shrinking police force, a struggling economy, rising alcohol abuse, a flood of illegal weapons, hundreds of thousands of traumatized soldiers, and pardoned convicts. Each is serious alone. Together, a tipping point, a quiet crisis could explode into open violence. The clock is ticking. Solutions are difficult but clear. Make policing viable and respected again. Raise pay, improve benefits, provide psychological support, create responsible pathways for veterans to reintegrate, not just hope they will. Confront the prison recruitment fallout. Pardoning violent criminals and hoping for the best is not a strategy. If the Kremlin fails to act, internal instability risks global consequences. Empty stations, rising crime, chilling stories, all point the same way. Obsessed with the war, he traded domestic security for manpower. The police state's foundation is crumbling. Without immediate and drastic action, Russia's future is not order and strength, but violence, chaos, and uncertainty.